Okay, so today we're going to be creating a pencil topper using SketchUp, the web app, which we will then print using the 3D printers in the classroom. So we start with a brand new SketchUp document, which comes standard with this little character in it. We don't need that at the moment, so we can just highlight him by using our arrow tool and drawing a box around him and press delete. We now have an empty workspace. We do need to check the measurements that this workspace is using at the moment. So if you come over to our tool panel on the right hand side of the screen and choose model info, it will allow us to ensure that the format is set to millimeters, and we want our precision to be quite strong, so we can leave it at 0.0000, but depending on the project that you are creating, you can change this, but we definitely at least want it to have 1.0. So we can close that. So the very first thing we're going to do is use our drawing tools to draw a rectangle. So we can click on our rectangle option, and we want to draw a rectangle on the blue axes and across the x-axis, or the blue axis and the red axis. Now sometimes you will find that it wants to jump to the green axis, or it wants to sort of lie flat on the ground, and it can be sort of difficult to get it to go on the axis that you want it to go on. So if that's happening for you, we can press O for orbit, and we can just orbit the screen around a little bit. So the blue and the red axes are the kind of the two most prominent axes. Now we should find that if we draw up and across, it will actually jump to the blue and the red axes more easily. Now the sizes that we want in there are 12 across the x-axis and 20 up the y-axis or the blue axis. So we can just type 12, 20, and you'll see that that changes the dimensions at the bottom of the screen, and we can press enter, and that will create our rectangle. Now we can see that our rectangle is actually very tiny down here, so we can just zoom in using the scroll wheel of our mouse, and if we find that it's sort of going off to the side of the screen, you can press H to get your hand tool and rearrange your screen if you need to. So this is going to be the basis of our pencil topper. Now what we need to do is actually add some markers in this so we can draw out the shape that's going to go around our pencil topper. So we use our measuring tape to do that. If you can't see your measuring tape, it's the third option from the bottom on the left-hand side panel. And you can click that option and then choose whichever of the tools you want from underneath that. So we're going to go with our measuring tape. So we want to make a vertical axis, so we can start here on our blue axis, and we type 3.9, enter, and that will then create a guideline at the 3.9 mark. Now 3.9 is actually half the size of my pencil. So my pencil was just under 8 millimeters, so I've decided to make that marker at 3.9 because this will be half of the area that actually sits over my pencil. So if your pencil is slightly fatter, you want to make this a little bit bigger. If your pencil is skinnier, then you're going to want to make this a little bit skinnier. But for a standard sort of grey lead pencil, around 8 millimeters is going to be the size. So therefore half of that was about 3.9, so it's going to fit really snugly onto our pencil. Okay, so the next part we're going to do is create another vertical axis line at 5.9, or around 2 millimeters further along than our first line. So this will actually be the width of the wall of the pencil topper, so the part that goes round the pencil topper. So again, we can just click here on the side and bring it out to 5.9, enter. And then we're going to make a couple of markers coming up from the bottom so that we can design the shape of our pencil topper. So the first marker we're going to create is at 5. The second marker we're going to create is at 10. And the third marker is at 17. Okay, so now we have our pencil topper marked out. We can use our pencil tool to actually draw the shape of our pencil topper. So clicking on our line tool, or our little pencil tool, we can draw a line from this marker across and all the way down to the bottom. Now what I want to do is actually just remove this section here because that's where our pencil is actually going to go. So I can use my eraser tool to remove those lines. Okay, so now we want to add a little bit of shape here to our pencil topper so that when it's sitting on our pencil it looks pretty. So I'm going to select our arc tool. And now we have a few options here to choose from. I actually want to select the second option here, which is the 2-point arc tool. So with that tool selected, I'm going to make a point at the bottom on our line, bring it up to our next intersection, and slightly pull it out. Now the size that I want this to be is approximately 1. So rather than trying to drag it out and get it right, I'm just going to type 1, enter, and you can see now that we have a 1 millimeter bulge there. I'm now going to make a bulge in my second intersection by clicking there, clicking at the second intersection and pulling it out and also making that 1 millimeter. Okay, so the last bit we're going to do is to create an arc up here. So this will actually be the part that holds the top of our pencil. So this will actually be where our pencil goes in. This will just be a nice pattern, and then this will arc out and hold the decoration that we're going to put on the top of our pencil topper. So I'm going to click here at our intersection again, but this time I'm going to click out at this intersection and drag up. Now it doesn't matter at this point really what the size of this is. I'm going to set mine to 1.5, but essentially all we need to do is make sure that it's not too straight on this top line. If it's too straight up here, then the printer's going to have trouble printing it without putting in a whole lot of scaffolding. So we want to make sure that we've got a nice curve so that the printer can gradually increase that without needing a lot of scaffolding. So 1.5, enter, and we have a nice curve. So now using our eraser tool again, I can get rid of these excess lines. Now if you find that this section here is not white, if it's disappeared, then you have gaps somewhere within your drawing and you'll need to go back and do it again to make sure that those gaps are removed. Okay, so using my hand tool, I'm just going to zoom into this a little bit and look at it from a slightly different angle. And we're going to use the Follow Me tool to bring this all the way around so that we have a full 3D object rather than a 2D plane. So in order to do that, we need a shape that the Follow Me tool will use to create, will follow basically to make the 3D object. So using our line tool, I'm just going to draw a small line up this blue axis. Doesn't matter how long the line is at this point. We can press Escape to get rid of this pencil that's following us around, and we can see that we've just got one line up the top. And using our Orbit tool, I just want to be able to kind of look at that line from the top. I'm going to create a circle that we're going to use to follow around. So clicking on that line, I can just bring a circle out onto the red axis like so. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to use this line here to create the basis for rotating around and creating our 3D shape. So the Follow Me tool is 7 tools down on your left-hand tool panel. Again, if you can't see it automatically, you can click on it and you have all of the different tools here, and the Follow Me tool is the second one. So what we actually want to do is follow this particular shape here with this face. So I can click on the face and you'll see that it automatically jumps out to follow that shape that I'd clicked on earlier. If it doesn't do that, you can also click it once and then drag your mouse around that shape to there and click again. So I can now erase my line and my circle. and I have a hollow shape which is going to go on top of my pencil. Like this. Okay, so this is the basis of our shape. Now on top of this shape we're going to create, well, you can create anything you want, you know, another 3D shape, or we can put some 3D text there, and that will then print and be placed on top of our pencil. But at the moment you can see that we've got this, the Z and the X axes here, or the green and the red axes, are only on a quarter of my shape. Now this means that in the 3D printer it would only actually print that quarter, so the quarter that's in this space. So what we need to do is select our whole object and actually move it into the printable space. And the easiest way to move an object is by transforming it into a component or making it into a component. So we can do that by grabbing our arrow tool, putting a box all the way around the component so that everything is selected. Right click and choose Make Component. Now on this, the definition, I'm going to call this Pencil Topper and press OK. So now using our Move tool, I can just move that so that it's well and truly into our 3D space. Now, just for neatness, I'm going to get rid of these marker lines now, just so that it's a little bit neater and they don't sort of get in the way. So I can use my eraser tool just to erase those so that our workspace is nice and neat. Okay, so for an example for this particular tutorial, I'm going to put some 3D text on top of my object. So coming down to my 3D tool, oops, not that one, this one, my 3D tool, you can see that the text is the last option I have there, 3D text. Okay, so I'm going to change my height here to be 3 millimeters, put my text extrusion there at 3 millimeters and press OK. So we have our text here and we can click on face. So now you can see that the text here is probably a little bit too high, it's going to be sticking out quite a lot. So we can now zoom into that and change it a little bit. So I'm going to come over here to my Move tool, and underneath it you'll see that you actually have a Scale tool. So with my Scale tool I can grab this one and just this one and drag it down. I can also scale it out this way to make it a little bit bigger and use my Move tool to place that onto the top of my pencil topper. And make sure it's nice and center. Just going to use my Orbit tool here and have a look and just make sure that that is actually sitting on top of my pencil topper and that it looks good from all angles. On my right hand side panel I also have this option for views. It looks like a little clapperboard from the movies, and I can actually just choose here to look at my work from different angles so that I can see if it is actually centered and if it is looking the way that I would like it to look. And it does. Okay, so essentially that is our finished pencil topper. We could save and export this, but at the moment the edges are probably a little bit sharp. It's not necessarily going to be sharp enough to cut your finger, but it is, you know, sort of a little bit of a hard edge. So what we're going to do, so we can click on our pencil topper, which selects the component. In order to edit the component, we can double click it. With that, now we are inside our component or editing the individual parts of our component. So I can just highlight to select all of the parts, and in my Displays menu on the right hand side, I'm just going to choose Smooth Edges. Now we can change the angle of the smoothing of our edges, and you can see that that's changing my model. I'm going to set this to be about 90 degrees. So you can see that that has just rounded out the edges of my pencil topper. And I can now click once on the outside here, and that will bring us back out of the component. I can also double click on my text, highlight all of that, and again choose smooth component. Oops. And that will now allow me to smooth the edges of my text as well. And I'll also bring that to 90 degrees. And we can click out of there. Okay, so now it's still going to have sort of a solid edge on it, but it's not going to be as sharp. It's going to be a little more rounded, a little more smoothed off. So as I said, essentially you can get creative to place whatever it is that you would like to have on top of your pencil. But for now, I'm going to save this. So I can come up to my folder at the top left-hand corner of the screen and choose Save As. And I'm just going to save this as pencil topper. And you can see at the top left of the screen that has actually saved, or is in the process of saving. So that is my working file saved. So that means now that I can come back into this and I can edit it at any time. In order to print it, I need to export it as an STL file. So an STL file is a file that's compatible with a 3D printer. So this time I'm going to come up to my folder, and instead of choosing Save As, I'm going to choose Export. And we have a lot of different options here for being able to export our model. I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom and choose STL. You can see now at the bottom of my screen, I have an exported STL file, and I can show that in my Finder, I can download it, I can open it, but most importantly, I can now save that onto my USB or onto the memory card to print. And that is our finished pencil topper, ready for print.